In this presentation, we will be working tax preparation problem number 1.4. We're going to be doing the data input, entering this into the forms, into the software, into Lacert tax preparation software, practicing the data input, taking a look at the forms. And next time, we'll be doing this information by formula, putting it into a formula within an Excel worksheet. Here's our 1040. So far, all we have is the basic information for the name. We have the single filing status. This information typically can be found within the documents. Let's take a look at the documents now. If you have access to the document folders, you will typically see an answer file, which will have the completed work with it. The working files, this will be the information like the W-2s and the 1099s and the working files, which will be the tax preparation forms, the things we're going to be entering the information into, and then the tax problem, which will be things like the W-2, the 1099, the information, the data. Here are the data files. We have our mock W-2 up top. So this is the way I would order it. If you were to do the data input with this information, you'd list your forms. You're going to put the W-2s, probably the first thing you want to input. And then we have one W-2. We have another W-2. We have a third W-2. 3 W-2s, we probably want to look at them and say, hey, are these all the same person? Are they different people? And if we have no idea who this person is, if we just pick this up from our tax office and we're looking through it, that would give us, of course, an indication that they might be married filing joint with multiple returns or one individual with 3. We could check the names on it to see if they aren't, and we see different names. Therefore, the assumption would most likely be that these are a married individual. Now, obviously, if these aren't new returns, if this was a continuing client, then we would already know that because it would be pro forma forward or carried forward from the prior year in our tax software. If it's a new client, then we can get that information from the W-2. We also have a Form 1099-G. Now, this is a new thing. We haven't seen it so far. This is going to be related to unemployment. Now, it's a government form that comes from the government, but typically from the state or local, and therefore the forms may be different from state to state, but typically you see 1099, you're going to think, well, that's going to be something that I have to consider whether or not it's going to be included in income. G, typically you can think a governmental type of form. 1099-G, first thing, you might be thinking, well, is this possibly a refund form or is this unemployment type form? You'll have the form to the right. And then, and so you can kind of line up the boxes. We're just going to list the box that we have here. Box 1 being the 800 for the unemployment, 4 being the federal income tax withholding on it, similar to a W-2 form. Then we have the interest down below. Once again, the interest on the right. We're going to say we have 2 interest items here, 2 1099 INTs, which have just simply box 1 with them. This should be box 1. And for $30 and $90, and they've had health coverage the entire year. All right, so let's go. We're going to start from the top. We're going to enter this information in. Notice that from the 2 W-2s, we can basically verify if it's a new client. We can say, okay, they're probably married. We're going to assume they're married filing joint here. We can get the basic information, names, social security numbers, and the address from this information up top. So we have Tom Jones. And then if we look at the second W-2, here's another Tim Jones. And then we have the Ann. So Tom and Ann, or Tim and Ann. So we're going to go back over here. We're going to go to the detail. We're going to go to the client information. And we're going to say that the filing status, this is where we basically would start off a new return. If we performed the return or we had it last year, it would be already filled out for us. We're going to say married filing joint. We have Tim Jones filled out for us. We could get that information directly from the W-2. We're going to keep it at the 999s. I know that's not what's on the form, but we're going to keep it all standardized within here. So obviously the Social Security would come from there. We can ask them about what's their occupation, although we might be able to guess that from the form. We cannot get the date of birth from the form, and we would want to ask for the date of birth. We need that information on the form, and it could have implications on the taxes, especially if they're older than 65. And Jones, we could pull that information from the W-2 typically, and we'll need the Social Security number in order to file the information. Occupation, we would need, I'm going to say a nurse here. Then we would have the address, which once again we can pull from basically the W-2 form. So that's going to be our basic information. If we go then to the forms, we're going to verify up top what we have. We got married filing joint. That's very important. We've got the 2 individuals that are listed as well as their numbers, which is how the IRS sees them, as the Social Security number. And then we have the address, Standard deduction adjustments, if they're older 65 or blind, those don't apply here. No dependents that we see thus far, therefore nothing here. We can then go concentrate down in on the numbers. Going to the numbers then, we'll just go from W2 down to W2. We're going to start up top, and we've got the box 1, 35,000, box 2, 3,600. So I'm going to go back over. I'm going to go to the data input. That, of course, will populate in line 1. I'm going to go to the detail. We're going to go to the income form. I'm just going to call it job 1 to keep it simple. So we would want the employee information there. And we said it was 35,000 and 3,600. So we're going to say 35,000, 35,000, and 3600 for the federal income tax withheld. If these numbers are the same, then our software will populate it, and whatever those numbers are, it can then populate the Social Security. So I would double check the Social Security, 2167 and the 508. So we've got the 2167 in box 4 and the 508 in box 5. Therefore, that looks good. So now I'm going to go to job 2. We're going to do then, well, we can check this now. Let's check it off. Not go too fast here. We're going to say, now, we can also designate, which spouse this is in. So this is Tim, the husband. Now, the tax returns are not like exactly politically correct, right? We're going to have to, in order to enter the things in the tax return, if we go to the forms up top, we'll typically have the first line, which the tax return would call the taxpayer, and the second line called the spouse, which would typically be husband and then wife if we have a married individual. So that's just, the general rule. So whenever you hear spouse, then you would think, for tax preparation, that would be the spouse. So we could allocate then between these two individuals, which could be important, and software can help us to do that. So again, the general rule is that when you record this information on the tax return, the income is going to be combined together and you'll apply them kind of as one person. But there are some instances where we might want to basically allocate and let it be known which W-2 we're applying to between the husband and wife couple, and the software can help us to do that. So if you go back over here, you could say, spouse here, and that'll help to designate who earned the $35,000 in the married couple. And spouse would typically be the wife, right, in a normal marriage. So I'm going to say uncheck this here. And so if it's the husband, it will not check anything. If it's the wife, then we would have the spouse checked off. Okay, so now let's go to the forms up top, and we'll scroll down. And of course, we'd have the 35,000 directly affected here. That will roll through. The other thing that's directly implemented from our W-2 is going to be the tax withheld of the 3,600. Now, if we go through the rest of it, we're going to say it's going to all follow through. Here's the 35,600. I'm going to put checks because they'll change. We'll be able to see the changes when we then change something. So then we have the taxable income, 10,600. Tax calculation will be that 1,063, and then the withholdings 3,600. Let's go back to page 1. And then we're going to go to the second W-2, also for Tim. So it's the husband, 18,000, 1,600 are the main two numbers we're considering. We'll go back into our data input. I'm going to add another. I'm just going to call it job 2 this time, job 2. And again, I'm not going to check anything off for the spouse. I'm going to keep it here. And we're going to say that the amount for the second W-2 was 18,000 and 1,600. So I'm going to enter those two numbers, 18,000 and 1,600, I believe, and then I'll check these ones to see if they're correct. So 18,000, 1,600, and that's right. And then these should be 1,116 and 261. So we've got that calculated 1,116 and 261 done by the software. So that looks good. We'll talk more about some of these other line items down below, like the retirement plan is actually checked off here. I'm going to delete the check actually for the retirement plans. Nothing's in the retirement plans, so I'm going to delete those. And so we'll get into the retirement plans later, and that'll be one of the things that kind of differentiate these numbers up top. So we'll keep it simple as for now as we go, but we have 3 W-2s. That's the new kind of thing here. All right, so then we're going to add another one. Then we've got the third W-2, and this is for the wife, which we're going to call spouse in the return. So Ann Jones, so we're going to go back over here and say now we have another W-2. Well, let's see what happened to the forms first. Obviously, if we go to the forms, now we have in line 1 the 53,000. It's going to be a little bit more confusing to support the forms with the schedules. That's why it's nice to be able to do this twice. We see a change down here for the total income. We see a change to the adjusted gross income. No change to the standard deduction, which is 24,000, because we have a married couple, which is twice the single. And then we have the 28,600, and then we'll calculate the tax on it on the next page, tax calculation. Okay, so on the next page over here, the 3,047, and then the withholdings now changed to 5,200. Back to page 1. Let's enter the next one. We're going to go back to the data. I'm going to say now we have another W-2, job 3, I'm going to call it, and that's going to be, we're going to designate the spouse. We're going to go back over here and say that's going to be for 53,4800. So I'm going to say 53,000 and 4800. It'll then help us to populate the Social Security and Medicare. I'm going to check these numbers, which is 3686 and 769. So if I go back over here, we've got the 3686 and the 769. So that looks pretty good. Notice I don't have the address and the EIN number, so it's going to give us an error for that. I'm just going to push forward. We looked at that in the prior presentation. We're going to concentrate on the numbers here now. So if we go back to the forms, what's going to be the change there? Now we have 3 W-2s. So this is going to be the combination of those 3 W-2s. We're going to want to verify that and double check, make sure we don't have a data entry error. One way we can do that is with the Excel sheet. This will then change the total income. Then the gross income will change. No change to the standard deduction. So now we're at 106,000 minus the 24,400 gives us the taxable income, 81,600. Tax calculation on that being done by the software. We're dependent progressive tax system will do that. Multiple rates being applied to it. That's going to be the 9,675. No child tax credit. Therefore, the subtotal is the same. We have the total tax being the same because there's no other taxes such as self-employment. Then we have the withholdings, which are 10,000. So 10,000 on the withholdings. Those come from the 3 returns, the W-2s that we've been looking at. And so we're currently at the refund of the 325. Let's see what else we have. We're going to go back over here and say, all right, what else we have? We had the 1099G. So now a 1099G is miscellaneous income. It's going to be unemployment income. Where would that go? Sometimes it's useful to visualize where it might be on the tax form. So if I go back to page 1, you would think it would be up here in the income area, up top, up above the 7B because it's a 1099. Or it might be in the schedule that has some more income items, which is in Schedule 1, more unusual items, such as unemployment compensation is line 7. So there it is on line 7. This software has a nice jump to feature. I can right click and jump to it, and then it'll help me out to find out the data input screen in that way. So I can jump to it, and then we're going to say, here's our data input screen. So I'm going to say state of California, let's say, and remember this form comes from the state generally because it's an unemployment compensation generally handled by the state. We're going to say unemployment compensation of 800 in box 1, and then 70 was withheld. So I'm going to say 800 in box 1, 800, and then we withheld 70. So 800 in box 1, 70 was withheld. Then if I go back to the forms, what's going to happen? We're going to see this change in the additional income now, and we see it populate over here in Schedule 1, it now being black or bold, so it's there. And then this will pull over to the first page of the 1040. Here's going to be that 800. So what's the change to the 1040? We still got the W-2 income, no change, but now we have this added income here of the 800 changing the total income. That will change the AGI. No change to the standard deduction. We do have a change to the taxable income, which is the income minus the standard deduction. Then that'll change the actual tax calculation most likely to the 9,851. And we also had a change to the withholdings because we actually withheld on the unemployment. So the unemployment, that went up by the 800. So then this is the tax, this is the withholdings. We're now at a refund of the $219. See if there's anything else that we had here. If we scroll back down, we also had interest. So we had the 1099 INT, two of them, we're going to say, one for $30 and one for $90. So let's enter that. Let's see what that changes. We're going to, and again, you could kind of think, well, where's that going to have an effect? I would expect to see it up here. It's a 1099 in the first part, therefore possibly income up top. So I'm going to say it should be in box 2A. I'm going to jump back from box 2A. It's going to be INT, 1099 INT. That's the one. And I'm just going to call it bank 1. And that was for, we said $30. So I'm going to say $30 here. And then the second 1099, I'm going to say was, I'm just call it bank 2. And this is for, we said the $90. So I'm going to say that is $90. And then see what happens to our forms. I'm going to go back to the forms up top. And so we still have the 106 here. We have the taxable interest, and then we have the 800. Now we have the taxable interest. That's the change. And then we have the 800, and then it changed here, the 106,920, adding up all the income lines. The adjusted gross income then changes the AGI. No change to the standard deduction. There is a change to the taxable income, which is the gross income minus the standard deduction. We will then apply the tax to that. It should most likely change given the change in the taxable income. That then pulls down, and we have the same amount in the federal income tax withheld because we didn't have any withholdings on the interest from our investments. And therefore, we subtract this out. We would think that the refund would go down, it now being at the 197. So remember, as you fill these out, you want to basically also go through your open items over here, and you're basically speculating that they're married. If you have any question on that, you ask, married, you'd think about the IRA deduction. Do you both want to put money in an IRA? And so that's one thing you always want to kind of keep in mind and consider. You're going to write down the questions, any kind of occupation verification, date of birth verification that you can do. So you're not going to stop the tax return. You're just going to keep pushing forward and then get that information later and see what kind of changes they would be. So you want to make sure you're right at the stopping point, going as far as you can, ask all the questions you can at one time, and then go back in and wrap things up.